Never mind. Does your thing really stand for hope?
Yes, it does.
But it looks like an S.
Yes, it's meant to. It's meant to wind like a river. It comes and goes. A man I knew used to say that hope is like your car keys. Easy to lose, but if you dig around, it's usually close by.
Did you ever fight a hippo? No, that's not. Hippos are the most deadly. What's the best thing about planet Earth?
What the fuck was that? Oh, fuck, I think I know what's next. Can't believe I'm putting myself for this piece of shit again.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new epic rant. And this epic rant is going to be for the next film in the DC Extended Universe that came after Wonder Woman. It was a film that we were all hyped to see, but unfortunately, there would become some problems with this version. And this film is going to be for none other than the dreaded Joss Whedon cut of Justice League. Oh god, now I've reviewed the Snyder cut when it came out. Now it's time to revisit the piece of shit Joss Whedon cuts that nobody likes. What's the plot? Well, like with obviously Justice League, fueled by his restored faith in humanity, inspired by Superman's selfless act, Bruce Wayne enlists the help of his newfound ally Diane Prince to face an even greater enemy. Together, Batman and Wonder Woman work quickly to find and recruit a team of metahumans to stand against this newly awakened threat. But despite the formation of this unprecedented League of Heroes, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and The Flash, it may already be too late to save the planet from an assault of catastrophic proportions. Well, how was this film made? Well, this movie had a very disastrous production from what we remember. It all started in February 2007, when it was announced that Warner Bros. Pictures had hired husband and wife duo Michael and Corinne Mulroney to write a script for a Justice League film. News came around the same time that Joss Whedon's long-developed Wonder Woman film was cancelled, as well as The Flash, written and directed by David S. Goyer, reportedly titled Justice League Mortal. The script for Michael and Corinne Mulroney was submitted to Warner Bros. In 2007, receiving positive feedback, which prompted the studio to immediately fast-track production in the hope of beginning filming between the 2007 and 2008 Writers Guild of America strike. Warner Bros. Was less willing to proceed with development of a sequel to Superman Returns, having been disappointed with its box office. Brandon Routh was not even approached to reprise the role of Superman in Justice League Mortal, and neither was Christian Bale for Batman Begins. Warner Bros. Intended for Justice League Mortal to be the start of a new film franchise, and to branch out into separate sequels and spin-offs. Shortly after filming The Dark Knight, Bale stated in an interview that it would be better if it doesn't tread on the toes of what our Batman series is doing, and it would make more sense of Warner Bros. To release the film after Dark Knight Rises. And Jason Reitman was the original choice to direct Justice League, but he turned it down, and considered himself an independent filmmaker, and refers to stay out of big-budget superhero films. George Miller was even signed on to direct in 2007, with Barry Osborne reducing on a project $220 million budget. We all know those did not happen, and George Miller's version was cancelled. With the release of Man of Steel in June 2013, Goyer was hired to write a sequel as well as a new Justice League, with the Bale draft being scrapped. The sequel was later revealed to be Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, a team-up film which featured Cavill as Superman, Affleck as Batman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Ezra Miller as Flash, Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and Ray Fisher and Victor Stone Cyborg. The latter three in minor roles that became more significant in the Justice League film. The universe is separate from Nolan Goyer's work in the Dark Knight trilogy, although Nolan was still involved as an executive producer for Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel. In April 2014, Zack Snyder would be directing Goyer's Justice League script, and Warner Bros. Was reportedly counting Chris Terrio to rewrite Justice League the following July. Having been impressed with his rewrite of Batman vs. Superman, in October 2014, Warner Bros. Announced the film would be released in two parts, with Part 1 in November 2017. Part 2's release date was not confirmed, and Snyder was going to direct both films. Then in early July 2015, the script for Justice League Part 1 had been completed by Terrio, and Snyder stated the film would be inspired by the New Gods comic series Jack Kirby. While Justice League was initially announced as a two-part film, the second part was set for release 2 years after the first. Snyder stated in June 2016 that they would be two distinct separate films and not one film split into two parts, but being standalone stories. Principal photography began on April 11, 2016, with shooting take place in Warner Bros. Studios, Leavesden, and various locations around London and Scotland. Additional filming took place in Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, and Judabavink in the West Forts and Iceland. Snyder's longtime cinematographer, Lang Ford, was replaced by Fabian Weger due to scheduling conflicts, and Ben Affleck served as executive producer. In May 2016, it was revealed that Geoff Johns and John Berg would produce the Justice League films and would also be in charge of the DC Extended Universe. After the largely negative critical reception of Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, Justice League had a troubled production. During filming, it is reported that the relights of Geoff Johns had caused issues with Chris Terrio and Warner Bros. Executives. Warner Bros. Was unsatisfied with how the film was shaping up under Snyder due to the negative feedback that the theatrical version of Batman vs. Superman received. It was even reported that Warner Bros. Held a footage submit to writers that include Joss Whedon, Wonder Woman screenwriter Alan Henberg, Seth Graham-Smith, and Andrea Berloff, and this caused numerous rewrites as Justice League was filming. And then we all know in May 2017, Snyder stepped down from directorial duties during post-production of the film, reasonably to properly deal with the death of his daughter, Autumn Snyder. But then, of course, did Warner Brothers just postpone the movie? No! They had Joss Whedon take over and handle post-production duties in Snyder's place. And then on July 7, 2017, they were going to plan on rushing 2 months of reshoots in London and Los Angeles, and Warner Bros. Put the $25 million to them, more than a typical $6 to $10 million additional filming costs, which brought the budget of the film up to $300 million. The reshoots coincided with Cavill's schedule for Mission Impossible Fallout, which he had grown a mustache, and which he was contracted to keep while filming, while Fallout director Christopher McQuarrie initially gave the producers of Justice League permission to have Cavill shave the mustache in exchange for the $3 million it would cost to shut down production on Fallout and then digitally fill the mustache in. Executives from Paramount Pictures rejected the idea, and Justice League's VFX team was then forced to use special effects to digitally remove his mustache. So after the movie was finished, finally, it would go on to be released in the United States on November 17, 2017. It grossed over $657 million worldwide against an unassumed break-even point of $750 million, which would be a good thing, right? No, if your budget is $300 million, that's considered a box office bomb. And Warner Bros. Lost $60 million as karma. Critics gave the movie bad reviews. They hated the plot, the pacing, the villain, cinematography, and computer-generated imagery sucked. While its humor and light tone were met with polarized responses. But the action sequences and cast performances were praised. Whedon's major involvement during post-production even received harsh criticism from casts like Gadot and Fisher. But thankfully, we all know we had a director's cut called Zack Snyder's Justice League that got released on HBO Max in March 2021, nearly 2 years ago, all thanks to the fans that wanted Snyder's original version since the film's theatrical release. And now, after 7 minutes, we can finally get to my reaction. And God, this is the worst film of the DCU. Just fuck this movie in general. I used to find this movie okay, up until I found out the whole truth about WB and how this movie got botched by some greedy executives that couldn't halt till Snyder was ready to come back and finish his plan. This whole movie was exactly the film that straight up ruined DC's reputation, and they had never recovered ever since then. Like, this should have been the most epic saga in DCU's continuity, but alas, rushing to compete with Disney finally took a toll on this franchise. The characters are well enough on their own, but their development as individuals are rather paltry. The cinematography is awkward at times and evident from multiple reshoots done by Joss Whedon. The CGI in some parts are terribly glaring to avoid, and it feels too much green screen effect that makes your head hurt while watching in a dark room. Some are bought too bright, while some are too dark. The color grading is very inconsistent with the background, and as you all know, Superman returns from the dead, which is kind of predictable at this point, but his resurrection isn't handled well enough here. What should have been the rekindling of the hope people look like the rebirth of a phoenix is marred by botched character interactions and idiotic dialogues. The supporting characters like Mara, Martha Kent, and Alfred are even wasted here, and one of the most highlighted parts of BBS was the interactions between Alfred and Bruce, engaging in both morally and logical decisions. Sadly, it was reduced to banal banter between them and others. I'm not even going to highlight the humor, since it's overdone and doesn't fit organically in the film narrative. Humor is good, and should be present, but not forced and overstuffed, and it feels like every recent Disney film now. Just move even further, just take all the previous DC movie mentions, except the Dark Knight trilogy, put it in a blender, add Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg, blend it all together, turn off the lights. The resulting disaster is this. This is what you don't do with superhero films. It would be like Joss Whedon making the Avengers in 2005, and then the Iron Man standalone movie never got made until after this. Just have the Avengers be the very, very first film in the MCU. Problem solved. Which would be shit. The movie does not even follow any of the source material. It just relies on Ben and Gal to carry the weight of the film, and everyone else just seems to be along for the ride with none of the other characters getting their own movie yet. So you have no idea what their motivations for joining the Justice League are. The movie jumps from scene to scene with no real flow, no clear direction, and halfway through the movie I even wondered how I got here, and when the movie's halfway done it feels like it's been 5 minutes of story. The story even itself is way too rushed. The apparent WB corporate directive of keeping the movie shorter than 2 hours seems to have done a lot of damage. Not that 30 minutes more would have made that big of a difference here with this cut, but it turns out the director's cut was actually better and had more development. It's even sad for me since in the DC comics usually have great well-written stories. Here, none. And probably due to being too rushed, the movie was a paced issue. Either it moves too slow or too fast. When you see the movie, you'll probably understand what I mean. Cyborg does not work at all because it's bad CGI. The actor was not even good in the role for this version either. He's thankfully much better in the Zack Snyder version, and plus, isn't Cyborg supposed to be a Teen Titans character, not a Justice League character? Come on! The villain here, this version of the villain does not work at all. Sure, if you read the comics, you do sort of have an idea and know a bit of backstory, but in this movie, none of that comes out. We are not clearly told who he is, but he's just some historical exposition. We do not know what motivates him. Why he is there, the little do we get to know, is not enough to the general moviegoer. The villain's also very, very generic. Probably the most generic villain we've seen in any superhero movie. He shows up with bad CGI, they fight for a bit, well, you can guess the rest. This is one of the worst versions of Steppenwolf I have seen. This is why thankfully they improved this villain in the director's cut, but in this version, he just sucks. A lot of critics even praise the Flash in this movie. Personally, I don't see it. He may have had a few fun moments, but he feels a bit forced and too much like, let's copy Marvel funnies about it. And you all know, the Flash in this version is portrayed by a real-life piece of shit, named Ezra Miller. You can all go like, you have to separate art from the artist to enjoy this role, but, guys, I can't. I can't separate art from the artist here. Because this Flash act's way too immature, most of the time, in both versions, even. And the dialogue is frequently very cheesy, the villain is boring, and part of a character's face is CGI'd and looks horrendous. Characters freely shout out secret identities in front of civilians, and portals conveniently open up at perfect times and in perfect locations. There's a random family that is shown every so often, and we're supposed to care about their well-being, yet the movie does nothing to make us feel attached to or even learn anything whatsoever about these people. So when they are in danger, it's not even a concern to the audience. And then the one thing that really bothered me the most, the final battle does not have a single drop of water in it. Aquaman is the main part of the film. Are you kidding me? I'm not saying the entire battle should have taken place on or near water, but at the very least, the director should have found a way to use water, since it is what a main character can control. So it was pathetic. Here. There's even a few major plot holes, and a few convoluted moments that just ruin the experience. And those moments are just very hard to avoid. You can see them as plot devices, or only forced upon badly written moments if you want to be more direct. And now that brings us to Batman's betrayal. Batman in this movie, he's now pretty much this dumb, useless Tony Stark knockoff who doesn't even do a single bit of shit, except brag about how rich he is, and even acts way too snarky here. There's even this prick moment where he even mocks Steve Trevor's death in front of Diane's face, which thankfully this scene was not in the Snyder Cut at all. And they also don't have him saying, "I bought the bank," when he's giving Martha back her house. Like, and then we also get to Superman's betrayal. He's just way too overpowered here for no reason, because he literally died at the end of BVS. So how in the hell is he even able to have this much powers and take on the team that easy after being revived? This makes no sense whatsoever, and he only redeems here all because Lois shows him his old farmhouse. Even the Snyder Cut did that farm scene way better and had a reason to be in the film. And almost every scene where Superman appears, he has this ridiculously expensive computer-generated botch job of a mouth to cover up a mustache that Henry Cavill wasn't even allowed to shave off for the reshoots because of commitments to Mission Impossible Fallout. And another thing that pissed me off the most by far was the final battle. God, you can tell how forcibly reshot this whole final battle was, and he just took some schnots from Snyder's version and digitally added them in. Like the evil fairies that accompany the villain. Yeah, I'm gonna call them evil fairies. I don't care what the fuck they are. I'm just calling them fairies. They have such horrible CGI. The green screen is obnoxiously obvious. And there's even stupid humor. Like Superman saying he wants to die again, and Cyborg joking about his pain. Diane even sums it up best, like she works with children. Yeah, I can even see her talking about Warner Brothers. You can kind of see it secretly Gal Gadot talking about how she works with idiot children from Warner Brothers that basically don't care about DC and just care about trying to be Marvel. And how does Steppenwolf get defeated in this version? Well, Clark and Diane destroy his staff. He's all whining like a stupid loser dumbass who didn't think his fucking plan through at all because he's a brain-dead dumbass. Basically, when his staff's broke, is like, this can't be. And they're all like, I smell that fear. And then Steppenwolf gets stupidly killed by his dumb fairies because he's so afraid over a staff. It's like, no, I'm your master. And gets sucked into a portal. Wow. What a great defeat that was. Can you imagine if Thanos got all freaked out when Tony took the stones from him in Endgame? And just freaked out when he was watching his staff get snapped away. It would be cringe as hell. And then when it came to his defeat in the Snyder Cut, he gets his staff broken, but he clearly doesn't give a shit about his staff. Because he didn't need it. He just got up, even having his horn broken, and he roared in their faces. He clearly was not through with them, and was still ready to kill them staff or no staff. And we actually, hell, he could even be feared in the Snyder Cut, and he had motives for his plans. But he's ready for more hits, and ready to go down killing the Justice League, before Aquaman stabbed him, and then Superman then punched him through the portal, and Diane cut his head off. A way better confrontation and defeat here, than what we got in this. Here. Like Steppenwolf would never get freaked out over something breaking. Steppenwolf's Snyder version was a badass. Then after that, the movie ends with the Justice League setting up their headquarters, which we'll never get to see, because this universe got cancelled because of a certain director and this version bombing at the box office. We even then get a stupid joke credit scene where Superman and Flash have a race to see who's the fastest. And the loser has to take the crew to brunch. Oh yeah. I almost forgot we get this stupid gag about Flash not even knowing what the hell brunch is throughout the whole movie. It just goes to show that the studio couldn't care in the slightest about delivering a serious and decent production. They had a release date, and they forced themselves to stick to it regardless of the outcome. And you can tell because most of the film feels rushed and cheap, which it shouldn't. Given it had a budget of $300 million, it's simply unacceptable for something of this capacity and scale to be the epitome of a mindless product from a blood-sucking and power-driven corporation. Would it have been such about a loss to put the project on hold until Zack and Deborah Snyder returned, or delay the film until everything was as good as it could possibly be? It turns out yes. Because 2021's version is what we should have got all these years ago. Like, what happened? And you're wondering, does this piece of shit have any redeeming qualities? No! No! It hell does not. Apart from the cast performances, and even they hated how Joss Whedon portrayed them, I cannot even think of any good qualities with this movie. Joss Whedon, dude, just because your little shtick antics worked in the Avengers in 2012, the shit that happens in Marvel does not work for something like DC. Moron. And you're all like, nobody takes me seriously, Hollywood, because you're a horrible person. You're a jerk in real life. We know how horrible you are as a real person. Of course we're not going to take you seriously. And you pretty much killed the DCU. With your greed. So yeah, this version will never exist again. Glad it's no longer canon in my book and will never be rewatched. In the end, Justice League, as I call it, is one of the worst superhero films ever made, and I recommend you never see it. And don't listen to those people saying, hey, come on, it's not as bad as everyone says it is, because it is as bad as everyone says it is. In fact, it's actually so fucking worse. Because overall, it's one of the worst fucking movies I saw through my life. It's one of the worst pieces of shit I've ever had to review on this channel. And if we're going to rank the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League, I'm going to fucking give the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League a -0 out of 10. Whew! I had to get a lot out of my mind with that. Sorry you had to probably hear that, guys. But you'll probably have to hear that for quite some time. But anyway, just ignore it. Okay? I try to be as loud, and I'm going to turn up the volume on this video when I edit it anyway, so you'll probably be able to hear me more clearly at least. So anyway, yeah, well, we finally got through the worst Joss Whedon version. Now y'all know my thoughts. And unfortunately, we're still not going to be going to good stuff at DCU because the next one that came after this, I also did not like, and sadly will also have to rewatch. If you guys like this next one, that's fine, but I didn't. Because you all know Aquaman's the next DC review. I mean, at least, well, I have 2 more DCU films to go. Aquaman, Shazam, and then my SnyderVerse reviews will be completed up until Fury of the Gods. And then you all know March is coming up, so it means I'll have to get back to my MCU reviews with Phase 2. Because you all know the plan I stick with. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this epic rant. Thank you all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.